Picture this, a medieval world, where sailors clutched their ship's rails, trembling at the thought of plunging off of flat Earth into a dragon-filled abyss, where people dodge baths like they're dodging curses, and everyone's so short they'd trip over a loaf of bread. Sounds wild, right? Welcome to History Orbit, where we ray about to launch you into the truth behind these jaw-dropping myths about the medieval Eurasian realms, those misty centuries between Rome's fall and the Renaissance's dawn. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button to join our cosmic journey through time, because trust me, you'll want to stick around for the secrets we're uncovering tonight. Let us ignite this orbit with a question. What if everything you thought you knew about the Middle Ages was gloriously, hilariously wrong? Buckle up, because we're diving into a world far stranger and more vibrant than any dusty textbook could ever suggest, and it's going to reshape how you see history. First stop, the myth that medieval scholars believed the Earth was as flat as a tavern table, ready to send explorers tumbling into oblivion. You've probably heard it at a family dinner or a half-remembered history class. The tale of nervous sailors peering over the horizon, expecting to see the edge of the world or maybe a sea monster's gaping maw. It's a gripping image, isn't it? Except it's about as true as a bard's tale of a knight slaying a dragon with a butter knife. The reality is, medieval thinkers across the Eurasian realms, from cloistered monks to stargazing scholars, knew the Earth was round. Not just round, but a sphere, measured with a precision that would make your math teacher weep with joy. Let's travel back to the ancient Greeks, where a sage named Eratosthenes the Measurer, around the 3rd century BCE, did something extraordinary. Armed with nothing but a stick, a shadow, and a brain sharper than a Byzantine blade, he calculated the Earth's circumference with eerie accuracy. Picture him standing in the sun-soaked sands of Alexandria, watching a stick's shadow shrink and grow, scribbling numbers that proved the world was a globe. His method, taught in medieval schools from Cordoba to Constantinople, was like a cosmic mic drop, passed down through centuries. Monks in candlelit scriptoria didn't lie awake fretting about cosmic cliffs. They pored over Eratosthenes' calculations, nodding sagely. So, where did this flat Earth nonsense come from? Blame the 19th century, when writers like Scribe Irvington, crafting tales of the bold navigator-explorator novice, painted medieval folk as superstitious bumpkins who thought the world was a giant pancake. Novice, you see, didn't argue with flat earthers about whether the world was round. He debated how big it was. He thought it was small enough to sail west to Asia without starving mid-Pacific. Spoiler, he was wrong. And only the America's convenient existence saved his crew from becoming fish food. Even sailors without a scholar-esque scroll noticed the Earth-esque curve. Watch a ship's mast vanish over the horizon before its hull, and you don't need a degree to get it. Medieval art backs this up. Emperors and holy figures cradled globes, not frisbees, in their hands, posing like they'd just conquered geography itself. So, let's bury this myth deeper than a Viking horde. The medieval world wasn't flat, and neither was their thinking. Ready for another shock? Let's talk hygiene. You've probably imagined medieval townsfolk as walking dirt clouds, smelling like a mix of damp wool and despair, dodging water like it was brewed by witches. Hollywood loves this caricature grimy peasants who'd rather face a plague than a bath. But here's the twist. People in these realms bathed more than you'd think, and they did it with flair. Picture a bustling town square, where stone bathhouses hum with life, steam rising like a dragon's breath. These weren't just places to scrub, they were social hubs, the medieval equivalent of a trendy cafe where merchants sealed deals, lovers whispered secrets, and gossip flowed faster than the hot water. In cities like Novgorod or Damascus, bathhouses were as common as taverns, offering not just a soak but a full spa vibe. Think herbal infusions of rosemary and sage. Not some lavender-scented boutique nonsense, but gritty, practical luxury. Even in rural hamlets, folks didn't shy away from a dip. Rivers sparkled under summer suns, barrels stood ready in courtyards, and rainwater was a free gift from the heavens. So, crafted from animal fat and lye wasn't exactly a rose-battled dream, but it scrubbed you clean. Royalty took it up a notch. Private bath chambers with heated water, perfumed with mint or thyme, turning bathing into a status flex. Monks, far from grimy hermits, followed strict washing schedules, their monasteries gleaming with discipline. So, why the dirty reputation? Point your finger at later centuries, when Renaissance doctors decided bathing opened your pores to bad air, making your average 14th century baker cleaner than a 17th century noble, who smelled like regret and stale wine. Partial washes face, hands, maybe a quick scrub of the socially necessary bits kept scandal at bay. But the idea that water was the enemy? Pure slander. Want proof? Manuscripts describe peasants splashing in streams, and archaeological finds show soap-making tools in even modest homes. So, next time someone says medieval folk were allergic to baths, tell them they're wading in a myth murkier than a stagnant moat. Speaking of myths, let us orbit toward another. Were these people all so short they could hide behind a barrel? During tax season, you might picture knights ducking under doorways or jousting tournaments, looking like children's pony races. The truth is less comical but far more fascinating. Skeletal remains from across these realms show men averaging around 170 centimeters, and women about 160, not giants, but hardly hobbits. Well-fed nobles often towered over their grain-munching peasant counterparts, but even the humblest farmer wasn't crouching to fit through life. Low doorways? Not a height issue, but a heat-saving trick. Medieval builders knew a snug doorway kept your hot warmer than an open hearth. Shorter beds? Blame the habit of sleeping half upright, propped on pillows to ward off vapors they thought could choke you in the night. Nutrition played a role. Sure, nobles feasting on meat and imported figs grew taller than peasants scraping by on bread. And onions! Chroniclers, eager to flatter their lords, wrote of kings looming like cathedral spires. But take that with a grain of salt. These same scribes swore monarchs could stare down a boar and win. The reality? Height varied widely, just like today. You had lanky guards, stout masons, and market women who could knock you flat for asking nosy questions. So, toss out the image of a pint-sized Middle Ages it as flimsy as a straw hut in a storm. Now, let's pause for a second. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Drop it in the comments. Let's see how far this orbit reaches across the globe. While you're there, give us a like if you're loving this dive into history's hidden truths, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our crew. We're just getting started, and trust me, the stars of history are aligning for something epic. So, we've debunked flat Earths, filthy bodies, and tiny statures. But what about the idea that these realms were a cultural black hole, a so-called dark age where minds stagnated and life was all mud and misery? Picture this, a world where universities sprout like spring flowers, where mechanical clocks tick for the first time and Gothic cathedrals soar toward the heavens, their spires daring the sky to answer back. Does that sound like a blackout to you? The Dark Ages label is a Renaissance marketing scam, cooked up by scholars who wanted their era to shine by dimming the past. In truth, medieval Eurasian realms buzzed with ideas. Monks didn't just pray, they debated philosophy with the intensity of a modern internet flame war. Scholars in Baghdad and Bologna wrestled with astronomy, optics, and the ethics of monolending, all while sipping ale that was safer than the local water. Life wasn't all somber chants and ploughing fields. Tournaments saw armored warriors clash for glory. Markets thrummed with acrobats and minstrels, and festivals turned villages into riotous parties the church sometimes had to shut down. Lighting. Sure, it was dimmer than your lead-lit room, but oil lamps and torches cast enough glow for intricate manuscripts to be crafted, their colors so vivid they'd make your eyes ache. Dull. Hardly. Imagine a street where you could buy a goose, hire a scribe, and get your tooth yanked all in one chaotic morning. This wasn't a world frozen in gloom, it was alive, noisy, and bursting with creativity. But what about the food? Surely it was all boiled cabbage and tears, right? Wrong again. Let's savor this one. Medieval kitchens could make your taste buds dance with flavors that would shock a modern chef. Spices like cinnamon, cloves, and saffron weren't just for the elite. They were dumped into stews, fish, even wine, with the enthusiasm of a kid discovering hot sauce. These weren't subtle pinches. Cooks went all in, turning meals into status symbols. Noble feasts were pure theater, Picture a roasted peacock, feathers reattached for flair, or a pie that, when sliced, released live birds in a flurry of feathers. Sweet and savory collided in dishes like meat stewed with honey and dried plums, a combo that sounds wild until you realize you've eaten worse at a fusion food truck. Even peasants who trick herbs like parsley, preserved fish, or a splash of ale turned their bread-heavy diets into something worth savoring. Scarcity hit hard during famines, sure, when meals were more survival than celebration. But when times were good, tables groaned with color and flavor. Markets offered almonds, candied ginger, even imported oranges if you were lucky. So, forget the myth of bland gruel these folks cooked with a boldness that would make a foodie blush. Now, as we've orbited through these myths, you're probably wondering, if they were this savvy, what else did they get right? Their daily lives weren't just about survival, they were shaped by rituals and customs that bound communities across vast distances. Imagine a lone rider on the horizon, dust swirling, approaching a camp under an endless sky. What happens next isn't just a meal, it's a sacred dance of hospitality that could turn enemies into allies. Curious? Let's shift our orbit to the windswept grasslands of Central Asia, where every stranger at your tent flap carries the weight of fate. Stay with us, this journey's about to get wilder. As we spiral deeper into the vibrant orbit of medieval Eurasian realms, we race still unraveling the tangled myths that paint this era as a grim slog through mud. And ignorance! You've just seen how scholars knew the earth was a globe, how bathhouses were the place to be, and how feasts could make a modern chef jealous. But the misconceptions don't stop there. Picture a knight in shining armor, clanking like a walking tin can, stuck on his back like a flipped beetle, or a monk torching books while glaring at anyone with a curious mind. Sound familiar? These are the stories we've been fed, the ones that make the Middle Ages seem like a cartoon of clumsiness and superstition. Let's keep our journey blazing, and if you're loving this ride through history's hidden truths, drop a like and tell us in the comments which myth you thought was true until now. Ready to debunk more? Let us dive into the idea that knights in these realms were bumbling turtles trapped in metal shells. Starting with a question that'll make you rethink every sword and shield flick you've ever seen. What if armor wasn't a prison, but a ticket to battlefield swagger? The myth goes that a knight in full plate armor was about as mobile as a barrel in a storm, wobbling until someone tipped him over, then flailing helplessly while his foe took a lunch break before finishing the job. It's a hilarious image, isn't it? Picture Sir Roland of Novgorod sprawled in the dirt, waving his sword like a toddler with a rattle, except that's not how it worked. A well-crafted suit of plate armor, forged in the smithies of places like Milan or Samarkand, weighed about 45 to 60 pounds, spread evenly across the body like a second skin. That's no heavier than a modern soldier-s gear or a hiker-s overstuffed backpack. These weren't clunky tin cans, they were engineering marvels tailored to let knights sprint, vault onto horses, and even roll in a grapple like they were auditioning for a medieval fight club. Want proof? Surviving manuals from the era show armored warriors pulling off moves that would leave a gym bro. Winded think wrestling, leaping, and swinging swords with precision. Armorers weren't in the business of trapping heroes. They were keeping them alive to cleave through enemies. So where did this turtle knight myth come from? Blamed at jousting tournaments where knights wore specialized gear, heavier and bulkier, like the sports pads of their day. Picture a football player in full gear trying to run a marathon, not happening. But that's not what they were built for. Jousting armor was for showy clashes, not battlefield sprints. Then there's the Victorian era when enthusiasts donned poorly fitted replicas, stumbling like drunks in a costume shop, giving us the image of knights as clumsy relics. Modern shows didn't help, leaning into slapstick over reality. Truth is, a knight in combat armor moved with confidence, striding into battle knowing a sword might dent his plate, but not his ego. Imagine charging into a fray, your armor gleaming under the sun, each step ringing with the certainty that you're not just surviving, you're owning the field. That's the real medieval vibe, not some Hollywood tumble. Speaking of misconceptions, let's tackle a big one, the idea that the medieval church was a science-hating machine, burning books and chasing astronomers with pitchforks. You've seen the movies, grim clerics smashing telescopes while thunder roars. But what if the church was actually bankrolling the brains of the era? Here's the twist. Many of the sharpest minds in these realms were clergy. Monks in scriptoria didn't just copy prayers, they preserved ancient Greek and Arabic texts, from Aristotle to Al-Khwarizm, keeping algebra and astronomy alive. Universities, like those in Paris and Salerno, were church-funded powerhouses, churning out scholars who debated optics, anatomy, and the stars with a passion that would make a modern professor blush. The clash with stargazer Golan, who dared suggest the Earth orbited the Sun, wasn't about hating science, it was about challenging a cosmic order that doubled as theology. The church didn't ban science, it set boundaries, like a parent telling a kid not to touch the stove. Want evidence? Monastic observatories tracked stars to calculate Easter's date, laying groundwork for astronomical breakthroughs. Hospitals run by religious orders offered care, blending prayers with practical remedies like honey for wounds. Sure, some ideas like wearing a dead mole to cure a cough sound bonkers, but they were working with what they knew, building on centuries-old texts. The science-hating church myth owes its life to Enlightenment writers who, much like their Renaissance predecessors, trashed the Middle Ages to make their own era shine. But those dusty monks, scribbling under flickering lamps, saved knowledge that would have otherwise crumbled to time. So, next time someone says the church crushed curiosity, remind them it was the medieval clergy who kept the flame of inquiry burning. Now, let us orbit to a myth that is thrown around like a grim statistic. Everyone in these realms died. At 30, barely outliving their own birthdays. You've heard it, right? The idea that life expectancy was so low, people celebrated their 29th year like it was their last. It's a dramatic thought. Imagine blowing out candles and knowing you're on borrowed time. But here's the real story, and it's less tragic than you think. The 30 years figure is an average, dragged down by brutal infant mortality. Babies faced a gauntlet of diseases, poor sanitation, and the occasional tumble into an open well, pulling the numbers low. If you survived childhood, your odds of hitting 50 or even 60 were solid, assuming you dodged wars, plagues, and a stray dagger in a tavern brawl. Records brim with grizzled farmers, sharp-tongued matrons, and bishops complaining about youth these days in flawless Latin, well into their grey years. Archaeological digs back this up. Skeletons with worn teeth and healed fractures tell tales of folks who lived long enough to earn arthritis and a few battle scars. Why does this myth persist? It's punchy, dramatic, and fits the narrative of a brutal era. But saying life expectancy was 30 due to high child mortality doesn't have the same cocktail party zing. Think of it like this. If half the kids today didn't make it past 5, our average age would tank. Even if adults were still golfing at 75. Medieval people weren't dropping dead at 30, they were outliving their teeth, their patience, and sometimes their rivals. So, let's retire this grim statistic and see these folks as survivors, not doomed mayflies. Another stubborn myth paints medieval justice as a free-for-all of sword-swinging trials, where disputes ended with two men hacking at each other in the rain, God supposedly cheering for the winner. Picture it. A farmer accuses his neighbor of stealing a cow, and instead of a courtroom, they're duking it out in a muddy field. It's cinematic, sure, but trial by combat was rarer than a unicorn sighting. The idea was that divine favor would guide the righteous hand, but in practice, it often meant the better swordsman won, which wasn't exactly heavenly justice. Most disputes were settled with oaths, witnesses, or the occasional trial by ordeal like dunking someone in a river to see if they floated. Combat was a last resort, expensive and risky, like betting your life savings on a cage match. When it happened, it was a spectacle, drawing crowds like a medieval pay-per-view event. A famous case, the Duel of Valor in 1386, saw nobles, Sir Joran and Sir Lacon, clash over a land dispute, but such events were outliers, not the norm. By the late Middle Ages, paperwork and judges were taking over, and trial by combat faded to a quirky footnote, lingering in law books until someone tried it in 1819, prompting a quick rewrite. So, no, medieval courts weren't just armored brawls, they were more about quills than quarrels. Let's keep orbiting with another misconception. Medicine in these realms was just leeches, and prayers a grim parade of bleeding patients until they stopped moving. Sure, leeches were real, used to balance the body's humors, blood, phlegm, and bile, per ancient theories. But medicine was a vibrant mix of science, folklore, and grit. Physicians, draped in robes, tossed Latin phrases like confetti. Apothecaries mixed herbs like willow bark, a natural painkiller we still use as aspirin. Barber surgeons were the multitaskers, cutting hair, pulling teeth, and lopping off limbs with the same cheerful efficiency. Some remedies were wild powdered emeralds for fever, anyone? But others, like garlic for infections or honey for wounds, held up under modern scrutiny. Hospitals, often run by monks or nuns, offered beds and care, even if care sometimes meant a psalm and a pat on the head. In places like Islamic Granada, surgeons wrote detailed manuals, sketching anatomy with a precision that would impress a med student. The myth of medical ignorance ignores these strides, focusing on the weird instead of the wise. Medieval healers weren't just guessing, they were experimenting, building a foundation for the science we know today. Now, let us address the big one, the idea that life in these realms was a relentless grind, a misery marathon where every day was a battle against famine, plague, and gloom. You've seen the movies, peasants trudging through mud, faces etched with despair, as if joy was outlawed. But what if life was more than survival? Imagine a village square bursting with color, jugglers tossing flaming torches, minstrels strumming tales of heroes, and kids chasing a leather ball while adults bet on the outcome. Festivals turned towns into chaos with dancing, feasting, and wine flowing until the church stepped in to calm things down. Weddings lasted days, with enough food to make a banquet hall groan. Even peasants played games from archery to dice, finding fun between the harvests. Art flourished. Embroidered cloaks, carved wood, and stories told by firelight weren't just distractions. They were proof that beauty mattered. Yes, life had its horrors: war, disease, the occasional Viking raid, but it also had laughter, love, and moments that lit up the darkest winters. The misery-only myth is modern cynicism, not history. People lived, loved, and sang, just like us, minus the Wi-Fi but with better aim. So, what's the takeaway from this orbit? The medieval Eurasian realms weren't a grey wasteland of ignorance and gloom. They were a tapestry of ingenuity, flavor, and resilience, woven by people who faced the world with sharp minds and bold hearts. But as we've seen, life wasn't just about debunking myths, it was shaped by connections, by the way strangers were welcomed or walls were defended. Imagine now a different kind of landscape, not of stone cities or cathedral spires, but of endless grasslands where a single rider on the horizon could change everything. What happens when a stranger steps into a nomad's tent? It's not just a meal, it's a sacred pact, a dance of trust under an eternal sky. Let's shift our orbit to the windswept plains of Central Asia, where every guest carries a spark of fate, and hospitality is a law stronger than steel. Keep spinning with us, this journey is about to get wilder. Feel the wind whip across your face, carrying the scent of wild grass and distant campfires, as a lone rider crests the horizon under a sky so vast it seems to swallow the world. You're no longer in the stone-walled cities of medieval Eurasian realms, but on the boundless Central Asian grasslands where the Khaden horde roams, their lives woven into the rhythm of hoofbeats and seasons. We've debunked myths of flat earths, filthy nights, and joyless lives, revealing a world pulsing with ingenuity and spirit. Now, our orbit shifts to a place where a stranger's arrival isn't just a visit, it as a sacred test, a moment ordained by the eternal sky god Tengri. If you're loving this journey through history's hidden truths, smash that like button and drop a comment. What is the kindest thing you've done for a stranger? Because here, hospitality isn't just kindness, it's a code that binds nomads across a merciless land. Let's dive into the heart of the Khaden horde's traditions, where every guest, friend or foe, is welcomed with a bowl of steaming broth and a seat by the fire. Picture this: a dusty traveler, cloak tattered from weeks on the steppe, approaches a cluster of homes, their felt walls glowing faintly under the twilight. The Khaden horde, descendants of ancient nomads, don't see a stranger, they see a gift from Tengri, a challenge to prove their honor. Hospitality here isn't a polite gesture, it's a sacred duty. as vital as the herds that sustain them. The steppe is a paradox, beautiful yet deadly, where days of riding separate one camp from another, and a night without shelter can freeze your bones. To turn away a traveler is to court their death and invite misfortune on your own kin. Whether the rider is a merchant from the Silk Road, a rival clansman, or even a warrior who once raided your lands, the rule is the same. You open your jahome, you share your fire, you offer your best. Why? Because out here, under an endless sky, you never know when you'll be the one seeking refuge. This isn't just about survival, it's about dignity, a shared thread of humanity that ties strangers together across the vast emptiness. Imagine a warrior, call him Arslan the Wanderer, riding into a camp led by Chieftain Caden. Years ago, Arslan's clan clashed with Caden's, leaving scars and grudges that could spark a feud. Yet, as he dismounts, Caden steps forward, hands open, no blade in sight. The jahome's flap, always facing south to greet the sun, is lifted and Arslan steps into warmth, the hearth's glow dancing on felt walls. He's not an enemy now, he's a Zovri, a guest of the moment, under Caden's protection. They share a bowl of mutton broth, its steam curling like a prayer, and stories flow late into the night. To kill a guest would insult Tengri, staining a family's honor for generations. But there's more to it. Generosity builds prestige. Caden's name travels with every traveler who eats at his fire. A currency as valuable as horses. There's strategy here. To a fed foe might hesitate to draw his bow later, or carry tales of goodwill to ease all tensions. This is diplomacy by firelight, sealed with bread and trust, not parchment. Want to know how it works? Every gesture is a ritual, a choreography of respect. As a guest approaches, the host steps outside, standing tall but come-rushing seems desperate. Lingering feels cold. The guest's horse is taken, reins held gently, signaling care for both rider and mount. Inside, the fire burns steady, its smoke rising through the tuno, the circular roof opening. This fire isn't just warmth, it's the Jahome spirit, a guardian never to be crossed or disrespected. Stepping over it is taboo, like spitting in a temple. The guest is seated in the north, the place of honor, facing the hearth and entrance. A spot of safety and respect. Weapons are set aside, visible but untouched, a silent vow of peace. Then comes the erug, fermented mare's milk poured into a carved wooden bowl. The guest accepts with both hands, no hidden blades here. Refusing it? Unthinkable. It's not just a drink, it's a bond, a pact of trust. Bread, curds or meat follow, depending on the host's wealth. Conversation starts, slow blessings, talk of weather easing into deeper matters. These aren't formalities, they're a language of survival, ensuring trust in a land where betrayal could mean death. Every sip, every seat, says you belong here, for now. Food on the steppe is more than sustenance, it's a contract. Ereg, churned daily in leather bags by the Jahome's entrance, is the first offering, its tangy bite a taste of the land's rhythm. Mares are milked at dawn, the liquid stirred with every passerby, turning it into a lightly alcoholic brew that seals the guest's welcome. Next come Bortzeg, crisp fried bread, sweet against the airags, sourness or aru, sun-hardened curds that test your teeth and remind you of the steppe's harshness. If a sheep was slaughtered, you might get steaming mutton soup, rich with fat, paired with thick noodles called bews. The order matters, ereg first, then bread, then meat, a hierarchy of honor. Serving fresh meat means the host gave up wealth for your sake. Guests are urged to take seconds, thirds, proving the host's generosity. In return, a guest might leave tea bricks, tobacco, or a promise of future kindness. This exchange isn't just food, it's a treaty, binding hearts across languages and borders. Picture a Silk Road trader, let's call him Varden of Samarkand, stepping into a Jahome after weeks of wind and dust. He's used to guarded glances in city markets, but here, before he can speak, he's handed ereg and a hunk of bread. The taste shocks his palate, but refusing would wound his host's pride. Travelers like Varden wrote of this welcome, marveling at its lack of conditions, no payment demanded, no questions of worth. A wise guest offers a token before leaving, cloth, beads, maybe a song, but it's not payment. It's respect. Language barriers? No problem. The ritual speaks louder than words. Ereg first, a seat by the fire, a refilled bowl. By the time talk begins, often through gestures or interpreters, trust is built. These acts aren't just kindness, they're power. A well-treated guest carries your name across deserts, building your fame faster than a galloping horse. It's politics by broth, alliances forged over shared cups. Even rival clans meeting to mend old wounds start with a feast. Picture Chieftain Caden hosting a rival, Lord Tamir. Horses are slaughtered, a lavish gesture, as horse meat is for grand occasions. The Jahome is swept, cushions fluffed, silver bowls polished. Tamir sits in the place of honor, served a spread that screams wealth, meats, fresh yogurt, rare sweets. Talk begins with blessings, easing into trade or truces. Each cup of Eric softens the mood, blurring the line between deal and celebration. This isn't just a meal, it's a reminder that survival depends on cooperation. Once you've eaten together, betrayal feels heavier, like an arrow you can't unloose. These feasts bind loyalties, from trade pacts to military vows, all without a single scroll. But this hospitality comes with rules, unspoken laws as firm as the stepp's frozen ground. Step on the Jahome's wooden threshold and you've cursed the household, inviting Tengri's wrath. The fire is sacred, never poke it or toss trash in. Seating is a map, north for guests, west for men, east for women. Sit wrong, and you've insulted your host. Eric must be taken with both hands, a bite of food accepted, even if it's too fatty for your city tastes. Complaining? Forbidden. Pointing feet at the hearth or touching someone's head, these are slaps to tradition. Weapons stay visible but untouched, signaling peace. These rules aren't taught, you learn by watching, or risk the shame of a misstep. They're not just etiquette, they're trust, woven into every gesture, ensuring the fragile bond between host and guest holds fast. The step seasons shape this welcome, each turning of the year bringing a new flavor to the table. Summer bursts with abundance, lush grass feeds herds, mares give rich milk, and Eric flows freely. Guests feast on clotted cream, yogurt, tender mutton, joining wrestling matches and storytelling under long twilights. Autumn hums with urgency, herds are fattened, meat preserved for winter. A guest might save a cork, mutton slow cooked with hot stones, its aroma filling the Jahome. Winter is stark, the wind a living beast. Eric gives way to salty butter tea, meat is dried or frozen, and guests huddle close to the hearth. Words soft against the howling cold. To turn away a traveler now is to doom them. Spring is lean, milk scarce, but hospitality remains a bowl of fresh cheese, a promise of greener days. Through every season, the Caden Horde offers what they have, a warmth that defies the land's cruelty. This tradition endures even today, beyond the grassland's modern edges. In towns, families still pour tea for chance-met travelers, echoing the old ways. Tourists, photographers chasing steppe sunsets. Historians tracing ancient paths right of being welcomed into Jahomes. Fed without a word of coin. For the Caden's heirs, this isn't charity, it's duty. A link to ancestors under Tengri's sky. Why does it matter? Because hospitality wasn't just kindness, it was survival, power, a way to weave peace in a world of wandering blades. Speaking of blades, what happens when trust breaks and walls rise? Picture a fortress in the realm of the rising dawn, its moats gleaming like coiled dragons, where a young prince defies a cunning warlord. The air grows heavy with cannon smoke, and a single spark, a misread inscription ignites a war that will shake a nation. Let's orbit eastward, where honor and steel collide, and the fate of an empire hangs on a citadel's walls. Keep spinning with us, the next turn is epic. Imagine standing atop a towering stone wall, the air thick with the scent of gunpowder and pine, as 200,000 warriors gather below, their banners snapping in the winter wind like a storm of crimson and gold. You reign no longer on the open grasslands where the Caden Horde welcomed strangers, with steaming bowls and open hearts. Now our orbit swings to the realm of the rising dawn, a land of samurai honor and ancient codes, where a fortress called the Citadel of Harmony stands defiant in 1614, its moats gleaming like coiled dragons under a frost-bitten sky. We've debunked myths of medieval ignorance and explored the sacred hospitality that bound nomads across endless plains. But here, hospitality has no place. Tensions simmer, a single spark is about to ignite a war, and a young prince's fate hangs on the edge of a blade. If you're gripped by this journey through history's twists, hit that like button and tell us in the comments, would you defend a castle or plot its fall? Let's plunge into the heart of this epic siege, where a cunning warlord, Lord Takerin, faces off against a defiant prince, Hadaron, in a clash that will reshape a nation. It all begins with a bell, a seemingly innocent chime that tolls the start of chaos. Picture the Citadel of Harmony, a fortress so grand it seems carved from the earth itself. Its 5-story keep piercing the clouds, surrounded by triple moats and walls that laugh at arrows. Inside, Prince Hadaron, barely in his 20s, clings to his family's legacy, the last of a proud clan that once rivaled the shogunate. Across the land, Lord Tokaran, a grizzled strategist who's outlived more battles than most men dream of, rules as shogun. His power nearly absolute, but for this one stubborn stronghold. Tokaran wants unity, a realm under one banner, but Hydaron's citadel is a thorn in his ambition, a symbol of resistance that draws restless samurai and masterless ronin like moths to a flame. The spark that lights this powder keg is a temple bell, newly cast for a shrine within the citadel's shadow. Its inscription, meant to pray for peace, carries words that Tokaran's advisors twist into a curse against him, a veiled call for rebellion. Is it true? Probably not, but in a world where honor is sharper than steel, perception is enough. Tokaran, never one to ignore a slight, sees a chance to crush his rival once and for all. By late autumn 1614, he's mustered an army of 200,000 samurai in lacquered armor, Ashigaru foot soldiers with matchlock guns and cannons hauled from distant ports. The numbers alone are staggering, enough to make the ground tremble as they march toward the citadel. Hadaron, undaunted, commands 90,000 defenders, a mix of loyal retainers, battle-hardened ronin, and volunteers who'd rather die than bow. The stage is set for a showdown that will echo through the ages. But who's got the upper hand? Let's break it down. The Citadel of Harmony isn't just a castle, it's a fortress designed to break armies. Its outer moats, wide as rivers, shimmer with ice, daring anyone to cross. Stone walls, sloped to deflect cannonballs, rise like cliffs, topped with archers who can pin a fly to a tree at 100 paces. Inside, storehouses brim with rice and gunpowder enough to outlast a year's siege. Hydaron's men, though outnumbered, know every gate and tower, their morale steeled by loyalty and desperation. Tokaran's army, vast as it is, faces a brutal truth. Storming a fortress like this is like wrestling a tiger. You might win, but you'll bleed. Winter's bite only sharpens the stakes, with frost cloaking the fields and breath clouding in the dawn. Tokaran sets his camp, a sea of tents stretching to the horizon, and his cannons roar, hurling iron balls that chip at the citadel's walls but don't break them. Hydaron's defenders answer with arrows and gunfire, their matchlocks spitting sparks from loopholes. The first weeks are a deadly dance, skirmishes at the moats, nighttime raids, and the occasional cannon shot that lights up the dark like a vengeful star. But Tokaran's no fool. He knows brute force won't win this war. He needs a plan, and he finds it in the serrated bastion, a fortified outpost jutting from the citadel's southern wall. Commanded by a tactician named Yukimaro, a samurai whose name alone makes enemies hesitate. This bastion, a low-slung fortress bristling with spears, is the citadel's shield. Guarding its weakest gate, Yukimaro, with his red-armored warriors, turns it into a death trap, repelling Tokaran's assaults with such ferocity that the fields below are soon littered with broken banners and abandoned blades. Picture the scene. Yukimaro's men, outnumbered 5 to 1, hold the line as arrows rain and muskets crack, their shouts echoing through the fog. Tokaran's soldiers charge, only to be cut down by hidden-trapped spiked pits, boiling oil poured from above. It's a masterclass in defense, and for a moment, it seems the citadel might hold forever. But Tokaran's cunning runs deeper than his enemy's resolve. He shifts tactics, ordering his cannons to pound the serrated bastion relentlessly, day and night, until the walls begin to crack like old pottery. His spies sow discord, whispering to Hydaron's allies that surrender might spare their lives. The defenders, though fierce, feel the weight of winter footholds, but morale wavers as the cannonades never cease. Tokaran's army digs trenches, inching closer, their gunfire now raking the bastion's ramparts. Yukimaro counters with daring raids, his samurai slipping out under cover of night to burn supply wagons, their silhouettes darting through the snow like ghosts. These raids keep Tokaran's men on edge, but they can't stop the tide. By December, the serrated bastion is battered, its defenders bloodied but unbowed. Hadoran, from the citadel's keep, watches the horizon, knowing every day he holds out buys time for allies who might never come. The tension is unbearable. Imagine standing on those walls, hearing the distant boom of cannons, wondering if dawn will bring victory or ruin. Tokaran, meanwhile, plays a longer game. He knows starvation and fear are his true weapons, not just steel. He offers a truce, a pause to negotiate, and Hadoran, wary but desperate, agrees. Envoys meet in a snow-dusted tent, words sharp as katanas. Tokaran demands the citadel's moats be filled, its outer defenses dismantled as a sign of good faith. Hadoran, backed into a corner, consents, hoping to buy time. Workers shovel earth into the moats, turning dragon coils into muddy scars. The truce holds, but it's a fragile thing like ice over a rushing river. Both sides know this is no peace, it's a breath before the plunge. Winter deepens and the citadel stands scarred but proud, its banners still flying. Tokaran withdraws his army to regroup, leaving Hadoran to rebuild what he can. The defenders cheer, thinking they've won a reprieve. But Tokaran's eyes are already on the spring, when he'll return with fresh troops and a hunger for victory. This isn't the end, it's a pause in a storm that's only growing darker. What's it like to stand in a fortress knowing war is coming again? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you hold the walls or slip away in the night? If you're still orbiting with us, give us a like and subscribe if you haven't already, because this story is about to explode. We've seen the spark of this siege, the bell that tolled for war, and the defiance of a prince against a warlord's might. But what happens when spring thaws the fields and Tokaran's army returns, cannons blazing, with Yukimoro's bastion as their target? The Citadel of Harmony will face its darkest hour, and a single warrior's stand will light up the annals of history. Let's keep orbiting. This clash is about to shake the heavens. Spring's first light glints off the Citadel of Harmony's battered walls, painting the moats with streaks of gold, but the air hums with the menace of war's return. We've journeyed from the myth-shattered halls of medieval Eurasian realms to the sacred hearths of the Caden Horde, and now we're back in the realm of the rising dawn, where the fragile truce of winter 1614 has crumbled like frost under a rising sun. The Citadel, once a fortress of defiance under Prince Hadoran, stands scarred, its moats filled in, its outer defenses weakened by Lord Tokaran's cunning demands. If you're still orbiting with us through this epic clash, drop a like and tell us in the comments, would you stand with the Dune Prince, or plot with a ruthless warlord? Let's plunge into the fiery climax of this siege, where cannons roar. A tactician named Yukimoro lights up the battlefield, and a single day's battle will seal a nation's fate. Picture the scene as spring 1615 dawns. The fields around the Citadel of Harmony, once cloaked in winter's frost, now bloom with wild flowers, but there's no peace in the air. Lord Tokaran, the shogun whose ambition burns hotter than a summer forge, has returned with his army of 200,000, their armor gleaming, their matchlock guns primed, their cannons hauled back to finish what winter started. Across the walls, Prince Hadoran, young but resolute, rallies his 90,000 defenders, samurai loyal to his fallen clan, ronin with nothing to lose, and volunteers who'd rather die than see their banner fall. The truce, which saw the citadel's moats filled with earth, has left Hadoran's fortress vulnerable, its dragon-like defenses tamed into muddy scars. Tokaran knows this, and his strategy is relentless. Pound the citadel until it breaks, or its defenders' spirits do. But Hadoran's secret weapon is Yukimoro, the red-armored tactician commanding the serrated bastion, a fortified outpost that still stands as the citadel's defiant shield. Yukimoro's name is whispered with awe, a samurai whose mind is as sharp as his katana, and he's about to make Tokaran's army bleed for every step they take. The spring campaign begins. With a thunderous roar, Tokaran's cannons, positioned in freshly dug trenches, hurl iron balls that smash into the citadel's walls, sending stone chips flying like startled birds. The defenders answer with volleys of arrows and gunfire, their matchlocks crackling from loopholes. But the filled moats mean Tokaran's troops can press closer than ever. Imagine the chaos. Samurai in lacquered armor clash in the mud. Ashigaru's soldiers fire muskets through smoke, and the air shakes with the screams of men and the groan of splintering wood. Yukimaro, from the serrated bastion, directs his warriors with precision, turning the outpost into a meat grinder. His men, outnumbered but fearless, use the bastion's low walls to funnel attackers into killing zones, where hidden archers and boiling oil await. One assault sees Tokeren's elite samurai charge, only to be cut down by a trap of sharpened stakes buried in the earth. Yukimaro's tactics are brilliant, but the numbers of brutally repelled attack costs lives Doran can't spare. Tokeren, ever the strategist, shifts his focus to the citadel's southern gate, where the serrated bastion guards the path. He orders relentless cannonades day and night until the bastion's walls crack like old bones. Yukimaro counters with nighttime raids, leading small bands of samurai to torch Tokeren's supply lines under cover of darkness. Picture them slipping through the fields, their red armor glinting faintly, setting fire to wagons loaded with rice and powder. These raids sting Tokeren's army, forcing them to guard their camps like nervous sentries. But they can't stop the cannons. By May, the serrated bastion is a shadow of itself, its ramparts crumbling, its defenders exhausted but unyielding. Doran, watching from the citadel's towering keep, knows the end is near. His allies, promised from distant provinces, haven't come, and the citadel's stores, though vast, are dwindling under the strain of feeding an army. Tokeren senses this weakness and presses harder, his troops now crossing the filled moats with siege ladders and makeshift bridges. The defenders fight with desperate ferocity, their katanas flashing in the spring sun. But the tide is turning. Yukimaro, ever the fox, plans one last gambited daring counterattack to break Tokeren's momentum. On a misty morning, he leads a force of 3,000 elite samurai and ronin out of the southern gate, aiming for Tokeren's command tent. Imagine the scene. Yukimaro, his red armor streaked with mud, charges through the fog, his men roaring behind him, cutting through startled Ashigaru like a blade through silk. They reach the riverbank, where Tokeren's troops scramble to respond. But Yukimaro's goal isn't victory, it's disruption. His men burn cannons, scatter horses, and sow chaos before retreating, leaving Tokeren's army reeling. It's a moment of brilliance, a spark of hope, but it comes at a cost. Yukimaro's force takes heavy losses, and the bastion's defenses are stretched thinner than ever. Tokeren, enraged but calculating, sees his chance. On June 4, 1615, he launches the final assault, his entire army surging toward the citadel like a tidal wave. The southern gate, weakened by months of bombardment, becomes the focal point. Yukimaro stands at the forefront, his katana raised, rallying his men for a stand that will be sung about for centuries. The battle is apocalyptic samurai clash in a whirlwind of steel, muskets blaze, and cannonballs tear through the air. Yukimaro fights like a demon, cutting down foes with surgical precision, but the numbers are overwhelming. Tokeren's troops breach the outer wall, flooding into the citadel's lower wards. Doran, from the keep, sees the banners fall, his heart heavy with the weight of his clan's legacy, as flames begin to lick the citadel's wooden halls, sparked by stray cannon fire. He makes a final choice. Following the samurai code, he and his closest retainers retreat to the inner keep, where they perform the ritual of seppuku, choosing death over surrender. The citadel burns, its towers collapsing in a roar of fire and smoke, as Tokeren's army sweeps through, claiming victory. Yukimaro, wounded but unbowed, fights to his last breath at the southern gate, his red armor a beacon in the chaos, until he falls, surrounded by foes. The Citadel of Harmony, once a symbol of resistance, is reduced to ash and memory, its fall sealing Tokeren's grip on the realm. The cost is staggering: tens of thousands dead, a fortress razed, a dynasty ended. Tokeren, now unchallenged, unites the land under his banner, but the songs of Yukimaro's stand and Hydaran's defiance linger, whispered in tea houses and carved into chronicles. What's it like to fight knowing the end is near? Imagine standing on that gate, your blade heavy, your heart heavier, yet fighting because honor demands it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you charge with Yukimaro or seek another path? If you're still with us, give us a like and subscribe if you haven't already, because this orbit's about to take a wild turn. We've seen the fall of a citadel, where steel and fire wrote a nation's fate. But what about a warrior who defied not just armies, but the very expectations of her world? Picture a woman on the Central Asian grasslands, her bow drawn, her strength unmatched, challenging suitors to wrestle for her hand and winning every time. Let's orbit back to those windswept plains, where Cthulhu the Unyielding carves her name into legend, and a single wrestle could shift an empire's course. Keep spinning with us, the next tale is unstoppable. A lone figure gallops across the Central Asian grasslands, her bow slung across her back, her eyes sharp as a hawk's, cutting through the dawn mist like a blade through silk. We've journeyed from the myth-shattered halls of medieval Eurasian realms, through the warm hearths of the Caden Horde's hospitality, to the fiery collapse of the Citadel of Harmony, where a prince and his warriors defied a warlord's might. Now, our orbit returns to the boundless plains where trust was sealed with a shared bowl of Erog. But this time, we chase a legend who doesn't just live by the steps code, she redefines it. If you're still riding with us, smash that like button and drop a comment. Could you stand toe-to-toe with a warrior who bets her future on a wrestling match? Let's plunge into the saga of Cthulhu the Unyielding, daughter of Chieftain Caden Con, whose strength, cunning, and defiance in the 13th century turned her into a name that echoes like thunder across the ages. Picture the grasslands in 1260, a vast expanse of rolling green under a sky so wide it feels like it could swallow the world. The Caden Horde, masters of horse and bow, move with the seasons, their Jahomes clustered like beacons in the wilderness. Cthulhu, born under this endless dome of stars, is no ordinary daughter of a chieftain. From the moment she could walk, she gripped a bow, her small hands pulling strings that sent arrows whizzing to their mark. By her teens, she rides like the wind itself, outpacing warriors twice her age, her horse an extension of her will, dodging and weaving through mock battles with a grace that silences doubters. Her father, Caden Con, a leader whose ambitions stretch as far as the horizon, sees in her not just a daughter but a force, a commander who can lead his armies against rival clans and distant empires. Cthulhu's no stranger to war. By her 20th year, she's charging into battles across the steppe, her quiver bristling with arrows, her saber flashing in the sun. Chronicles whisper of her leading raids against eastern kingdoms, her horse leaping ravines, her arrows finding gaps in armor no one else could see. Imagine her at the head of 1,000 riders, her black hair streaming like a banner, her war cry cutting through the clash of steel. She doesn't just fight, she dominates, turning skirmishes into routes. Her tactics as unpredictable as a summer storm. But it's not her battlefield prowess that makes her a legend. It's her challenge, a test so bold it sends ripples through every Jahome and bazaar from Samarkand to the Great Wall. Cthulhu, unmarried and fiercely independent, declares she'll only wed a man who can defeat her in a wrestling match. The stakes: any suitor who dares must wager 100 horses, a fortune on the steppe, where a herd is wealth. Status, life itself. Lose, and your horses join Cthulhu's herd. Win, and you claim her hand. It's a gamble that draws warriors, princes, even foreign nobles, each dreaming of glory and a bride who's already a myth. Picture the scene: a wide circle of trampled grass, the horde gathered, their cheers rising like a tide. A suitor, broad-shouldered and confident, steps forward, his eyes gleaming with ambition. Cthulhu, lean and unyielding, meets him with a smile that's half challenge, half promise. The match begins, and it's over in moments. She twists, pivots, and sends him sprawling, his pride as bruised as his back. Another 100 horses join her herd. Again and again, they come cocky young riders, grizzled warlords, even a silk-clad prince from a distant city. None stand a chance. By her mid-20s, Cthulhu's herd swells to 10,000 horses, a sea of manes and hooves that could outrun a storm. The steppe buzzes with a name, bards singing of the woman who wrestles men and fate alike. What's it like to face her? Imagine stepping into that circle, the crowds roar in your ears, knowing one misstep means losing everything. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you dare take her challenge? This isn't just about strength. Wrestling on the steppe is an art, a test of balance, speed, and cunning. Cthulhu trains with the best, sparring with her father's warriors, her body honed by years of riding and fighting. She's not the tallest or the heaviest, but she's a master of leverage, using her opponent's momentum against them. A flick of her wrist, a shift of her stance, and even the mightiest tumble. Her victories aren't just physical, they're political. Each win strengthens her father's position, her herd a living testament to the Khaden Horde's power. Suitors, humiliated but alive, spread her fame, their tales carrying her legend to courts and camps far beyond the grasslands. But there's a deeper layer to her story. Khaden Khan, ambitious and embroiled in wars of succession, relies on Cthulhu not just as a warrior but as a symbol. His empire, vast but fractious, teeters on alliances and rivalries. Cthulhu's challenge serves a purpose: it keeps suitors at bay without offending powerful clans. Who might see a marriage as a slight if she chose another? By demanding a wrestling match, she sidesteps politics, letting her strength speak where words could spark conflict. Yet, whispers persist. Some say Khaden pressures her to remain unwed, tying her loyalty to his cause. Others claim she relishes her freedom, loving the steppes' wild call more than any suitor's promises. The truth, likely a mix of both. Cthulhu is her father's daughter, fierce and strategic, but also a woman who carves her own path under Tengri's sky. Her battles aren't limited to wrestling rings. In 1280, she leads a cavalry charge against a rival horde, her arrows felling commanders before they can rally. Chronicles describe her riding through a hail of spears unharmed, as if Tengri himself guards her. Another tale has her defending a trade caravan from bandits, her small force outwitting a larger one by luring them into a ravine. These stories, recorded by travelers and scribes, paint her as more than a warrior. She's a tactician, a leader who inspires her men to ride harder, fight smarter. Her presence on the battlefield shifts morale, her banner a signal that victory is possible. But legends aren't immortal, and Cthulhu's story takes a darker turn. By 1306, Khaden Khan's empire faces mounting threats: internal rivals, external enemies, and a strain of succession wars. Cthulhu, now in her 40s, remains at her father's side, her loyalty unwavering. Rumors swirl of a marriage, perhaps to cement an alliance, but no record confirms it. Her end is shrouded in mystery. Some say she fell in battle, cut down leading a desperate charge. Others whisper of poison, a rival's quiet revenge. A few claim she simply rode into the steppe one day, vanishing like a star at dawn. What's certain is her legacy: songs sung by firelight, tales told in Jehomes, a name that means strength and defiance. Her 10,000 horses, a fortune beyond measure, bolstered her clan's power, ensuring their survival long after her time. Imagine her final ride, her bow at her side, the wind carrying her laughter across the plains. What would it be like to live so fiercely, to challenge the world and win? Her story isn't just about wrestling or war, it's about defying expectations, rewriting what a woman could be in a world of blades and banners. The steppe remembers her not as a princess waiting for a crown, but as a force who shaped her own destiny. Let's pause for a moment. Where are you watching from? And what's one legend you wish you could meet? Drop it in the comments, and if you're loving this orbit through history's wildest tales, give us a like and subscribe. We're not done spinning yet. Cthulhu's saga ties back to the hospitality we saw earlier, where trust was built over shared fires, and to the courage of the Citadel's defenders, who fought against impossible odds. Her life, like theirs, was about standing tall in a world that demanded strength. But as we've circled through these stories, from myths to sieges to legends, what threads connect them all? We've seen people across centuries and continents defy the odds, reshape their worlds, and leave echoes that still reach us today. Let's pull our orbit back, gather these tales together, and see what they tell us about the past and maybe about ourselves. Keep with us for one final spin as we weave these stories into a tapestry that lights up history's hidden truths. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing on a windswept hill. The echoes of clashing swords, thundering hooves, and crackling campfires fading into the distance. As the vast tapestry of history unfurls beneath a starlit sky, we've just completed an epic orbit through the hidden truths of the past, spiraling from the myth-shattered halls of medieval Eurasian realms to the sacred hearths of the Khaden Horde, grasslands, through the fiery siege of the Citadel of Harmony, and into the legend of Cthulhu the Unyielding, a warrior who wrestled fate itself. If you've been with us on this journey, drop a like and tell us in the comments which story hit you hardest, the one that made you rethink the past, This is History Orbit, where we don't just tell stories, we launch you into the heart of them. And now, as we pull back to see the full constellation of our tale, let us weave these threads together and ask what they reveal about the people who shaped our world and why their echoes still call to US today. Let's start where we began, debunking the myths that painted medieval folk as flat earth believers, filthy hermits or pint-sized knights trapped in clunky armor. We uncovered a world buzzing with ingenuity, where scholars like Eraton the Measurer calculated the Earth's roundness with sticks, and Shadow's bathhouses were social hotspots, steaming with herbal scents, and warriors moved in tailored plate armor with the grace of dancers. These weren't backward bumpkins, but people who built cathedrals that touched the sky, cooked feasts bursting with spices, and argued philosophy with a passion that would shame a modern debate team. Their world wasn't dark, it was a kaleidoscope of ideas, struggles, and triumphs, lit by torchlight and ambition. Why does this matter? Because shattering these myths shows us a past that's not a caricature, but a mirror, reflecting our own drive to learn, create, and survive against the odds. From there, we rode to the Central Asian grasslands, where the Khaden horde welcomed strangers with bowls of arrogant seats by sacred fires, turning foes into allies under Tengri's eternal sky. Their hospitality wasn't just kindness, it was a code, a dance of trust that wove communities across a merciless landscape. A guest like Arslan the Wanderer, once an enemy, could share mutton broth and stories, his presence a test of honor that built alliances stronger than steel. This ritual of generosity, from summer feasts to winter's butter tea, wasn't about wealth, but survival, a reminder that even in the harshest lands, humanity thrives on connection. Think about it. When was the last time you shared a meal with a stranger, and what did it teach you? That thread of trust carried us to the realm of the Rising Dawn, where the Citadel of Harmony stood defiant against Lord Tekeren's ambition. In 1614, a temple bell's misread inscription sparked a war, drawing 200,000 warriors to besiege Prince Hydaran's fortress. The winter campaign saw Yukimaro's serrated bastion repel assaults with traps and courage, but a fragile truce left the citadel's moats filled, its defenses weakened. When spring 1615 brought Tekeren's cannons back, the final battle was apocalyptic. Samurai clashed, flames devoured the keep, and Yukimaro's last stand at the southern gate became legend. Hydaran's ritual death marked the end of a dynasty, but also the birth of a unified realm. It's a story of loyalty and loss, where honor burned brighter than the fires that consumed the citadel. What would you sacrifice for a cause you believed in? That question lingered as we returned to the grasslands, where Kachulin the Unyielding, daughter of Khaden Khan, redefined what it meant to be a warrior. In the 13th century, she rode into battle, her arrows striking like lightning, her tactics outwitting empires. Her challenge wrestle her and win her hand, or lose 100 horses drew suitors from across the steppe, only to see her amass a herd of 10, 0, undefeated. Her strength wasn't just physical, it was political, bolstering her father's power while carving her own path. Her mysterious end, whether in battle or by poison, only deepened her legend, sung in jahomes and whispered in bazaars. Katulin's story isn't just about a woman who fought, it's about defying expectations, proving that courage knows no bounds. What connects these tales? From medieval scholars to grassland hosts, from besieged samurai to an unbeatable warrior, it's the pulse of resilience, the refusal to be defined by myths or limits. These people, whether debating the stars, sharing their last bowl of broth, fighting against impossible odds, or wrestling suitors under an open sky, didn't just survive, they shaped their world. They built universities, forged alliances, defended their honor, and challenged fate, leaving legacies that ripple through time. The medieval realms weren't dark, they were vibrant with ideas and ambition. The Khaden horde's hospitality wasn't weakness, it was strength, binding strangers in a harsh land. The citadel's fall wasn't just defeat, it was a testament to loyalty. And Kachulin's victories weren't just personal, they were a beacon for those who dare to defy. These stories remind us that history isn't a dusty book, it's a living pulse, a call to see our own struggles and dreams in the lives of those who came before. Let's pause and reflect. Which of these stories made you rethink the past? Was it the scholars who knew the earth was round, The nomads who fed their enemies, the samurai who fought to their last breath, or the woman who wrestled her way to legend? Drop it in the comments, and while you're there, tell us where you're watching from. Let's see how far this orbit reaches. If you've loved this journey, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, because History Orbit is just getting started. We're not here to recite facts, we're here to launch you into the heart of history, to uncover the truths that make the past raw to life. Think about the world these people built, a scholar's stick in the sand measuring the earth, a bowl of Eric ceiling trust, a fortress standing against a sea of steel, a woman's challenge reshaping an empire. What do they teach us? That ingenuity thrives in the toughest times, that trust can bridge even the widest divides, that courage burns brightest when the odds are darkest, and that one person's defiance can echo for centuries. History isn't just what happened, it's what we carry forward, what inspires us to question, to connect, to stand tall. So, what's next? The past is full of orbits we haven't explored, tales of rebels, dreamers, builders, and warriors waiting to light up your screen. Imagine diving into the markets of ancient trade routes where spies traded secrets with silk, or standing on the decks of ships that sailed uncharted seas, their crews defying storms and stars. These stories are out there and we're going to find them, strip away the myths and bring you the raw, pulsing truth. Subscribe now, turn on notifications and join us for the next orbit. Because the past isn't done with us yet, let's keep spinning, keep questioning, keep uncovering the truths that make history a living, breathing adventure. Thank you for orbiting with us today. Let's make the next journey even wilder.